Hello everyone, my name is Dwayne Kimball, owner and founder of KMD 89 VA Claims Consulting, Leave No Vet Behind, and also I'm a United States Army veteran. Today I'm bringing you another educational video as it pertains to the VA disability compensation claims process. But before I get into my next video, I just want to inform everyone that I will be doing another live stream on November 12th, next Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in that live stream, like I did last month, I'm just going to be discussing some trends that I'm seeing in the VA claims process and educating veterans on that, and also talking about different VA news from VA emails that I received. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so you can get notified. And I checked last night, someone said it was November 13th, but it's actually November 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's next Thursday, okay? So definitely you want to hop on that. Last month, someone requested that I do it every month, so I'm going to go ahead and do one every month. And it'll be probably about the middle of each month that I'll do it. So you want to make sure you subscribe and so you can get notified. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this next educational video. So what I'm going to be talking about today are DBQs. I've done several videos in the past on DBQs, and I've talked to a number of vets on a daily basis, and it's apparent that a lot of veterans are still not clear on the DBQ process. Okay, so I have 5 slides that I'm going to go over, and I'm going to talk about some different things that I think a lot of veterans are missing as it pertains to DBQs. Okay, so slide number 1. Here in slide number 1, you see this is a review PTSD DBQ, okay? So one of the things that you definitely always want to look out for is when you're doing a DBQ, the first thing, look in the top right-hand corner, okay? So you can see in this slide the expiration date. That's what you're looking for. Expiration date, May 31st, 2021, okay? Now, if the date is expired, that makes that DBQ insufficient for rating purposes, and the VA will not accept it, okay? But before I move on, let me clarify when I say, well, they will not accept, okay? Someone left me a comment in one of my previous, in the first DBQ video that I did. They will accept any information, okay? The context that I'm using will not accept. What I mean by that is once they receive it and they look to see if that DBQ is sufficient, and if it's not sufficient, they're not going to accept it for rating purposes. It's insufficient for rating purposes, and they're going to go ahead and schedule for a CMP exam, okay? So keep that in mind. So if you hear me say they will not accept, that's what I mean. They won't use it for rating purposes. They'll accept it. They won't get it and say, oh, it's insufficient, and send it back to you. It'll still be part of your claims folder. They just won't accept it and use it for rating purposes. So that's the context that I'm using when I say they will not accept, okay? All right, so you want to make sure the expiration date, and I have some asterisk marks on both sides of the expiration date. And for this particular DBQ, the middle DBQ, you can see where I highlighted in red, in parentheses, these are the medical professionals that are allowed to complete a review PTSD DBQ, okay? I talk to a lot of veterans, and they'll say, hey, I want you to review a DBQ for me, and the first thing that I ask them, what's the expiration date? And if it's already expired, I tell them, there's no need for me to look at it because they're not going to accept it for rating purposes, okay? Because the DBQ is expired. So with that being said, those are 2 things, especially on the review DBQ for PTSD, that you want to check, okay? So again, they're not going to accept it for rating purposes. So understand that comment or the statement. When I say will not accept, they're not accepting it for rating purposes. They'll accept it and put it in your claims folder, but they won't use it, and they'll schedule you for a CMP exam, okay? So let's look at slide number 2. In slide number 2, you can see Down, this is the signature block. And this is on all the DBQs, okay, the signature block. And the reason why I'm going over this slide again is because, again, a lot of veterans are confused. So 2 questions when they say, well, Dwayne, does your company review DBQs? Yes, we do. That's one of the educational services that we provide. One of the things that I look at, 1 is the expiration date. 2, I look at this signature block. And when I'm looking at, where is this doctor located? Okay? And then I ask the vet, where are they located? And then I ask the vet if they're, if they're out of state, or, if the vet is in Washington, D.C., and the examiner that completed this exam is in L.A., my next question is, was it an in-person exam? And if the veteran says no, that makes it insufficient. So they will not accept it, as it is insufficient for rating purposes, and they won't accept it to use it to grant the increase or service connection or whatever, okay? So that's what I'm looking at, the address. And I'm pretty sure the VA is doing the same thing, okay, to see where you're located. Now, in section 10, this remarks, where you see this red line, it states this exam was conducted in person. So if you are in DC and say you travel a lot and your doctor's in LA, that's not uncommon, but you don't see it every day. If it was done in person, then your doctor wants to put that this DBQ was completed in person, okay? So that's a little bit different, so that's different than the veteran doing it by telehealth or telemental or video conferencing. So if your doctor is out of state, you definitely want to put that, or have your doctor put, the examiner put that the exam was conducted in person, all right? So those are 2 things that I've been seeing that veterans, they don't have a firm grasp, or they haven't been educated on that, okay? So in some other videos, I talk about telehealth, then DBQs being removed from the VA's website. So those are definitely things that you want to check. The expiration date, where is the doctor located, was the exam done in person, make sure it wasn't done by telehealth or teleconferencing. Now, the VA in their regulation, they state that their doctors can do it, but your doctors can't. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's what that's the rules that they have in place that we have to go by. Okay, so slide number 3. Here in slide number 3, I'm looking at tele-CMP and tele-mental health exams. I'm not going to read the entire regulation, but I'm going to point out what I highlighted in red, okay? And it states a tele-CMP or tele-mental health examination report is only acceptable. There's that word again, acceptable, okay? Acceptable and actionable for rating purposes when prepared by VHA or VBA contracted examiner in response to a VA CMP examination request. Decision makers must not accept in lieu of VA examination any DBQ that has been prepared by a non-VA provider and completed by means of telephone or teleconference examination. So there you have it. If you have a non-VA provider do a tele-mental or telehealth exam by video conference or over the phone, that's not acceptable or actionable for rating purposes. So again, when I started this video, I said acceptable. Acceptable meaning they would not use it for rating purposes. Okay? All right. Now we're going to move on to our next slide. Slide number 4. And in slide number 4, you can see it says discontinuance of publicity. Publicly available DBQs. Now, this wasn't here. I think the update was done October 19, 2020. Okay, I think, yeah, the update in this manual policy. Now, the previous slide and this slide, these are not VA laws or regulations. Okay, these are just merely references or policies, but RVSRs, VA employees do follow them. All right. When you see the M21-1, that's, this is where I got this information from. But if you see any time where it says a reference and it has a 38 CFR, then that's the actual code of federal regulation. Okay, these are just references, but they're good references because you want to see exactly what the VA employees are looking at as well. Okay, so this is discontinuance of publicity available DBQs, and again, I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but at the top it says in April 2020, VA discontinued making DBQs available to the public. Okay, they didn't say you couldn't use them. They just said they discontinued making them available. All right, but if you have them or are able to download some or able to get your hands on a few, then the first two slides, that comes into play because you want to make sure it's sufficient and actionable and acceptable for rating purposes based on, was it done in person? Has it expired? Okay, so in this reference here, I highlighted two things in red. It says confirm, I'm sorry, let me back up. I'll just read the top. It says in April 2020, VA discontinued making DBQs available to the public if the evidentiary record contains a privately completed DBQ. Generally, claims processors must confirm the authenticity of the information, okay, as described in that particular manual. All right. Now, at the bottom, it says VBA's historical policies and procedures, because again, this is a policy regarding privately completed DBQs. See attachment historical M21. Well, this is no longer in the policy externally. It's on their intranet, and they can click, VA employees that have access to this internally can click on this link where it says M21-1 Roman numeral 3 dot Roman numeral 4 dot 3 dot section D 2-1919. Okay, so in the next slide, I'm going to show you that particular policy or reference. Okay, because I copied it before they made that change. Okay, and again, everything that I'm talking about, I'm trying to educate that so you don't get caught up in putting the cart before the horse. Okay, so let's look at this last slide and that policy. So slide number 5. Slide number 5, and you can see it states DBQs completed by VA and non-VA healthcare providers. And I put in parentheses because I used this in a previous YouTube video, removed. So this is in that previous slide where it says historical, this is the policy or reference that they're referencing. And it states review DBQs which are completed by VA or non-VA healthcare providers to ensure. And then it goes on to say the healthcare provider meets any certain requirements for the examination conducted, and the DBQ is sufficient for rating purposes. Then in the note, it states DBQs completed by a licensed healthcare provider to include a nurse practitioner or physician's assistants are acceptable for VA examination. Now, that policy is no longer there, but it was at the end of that previous policy of reference that I showed you as being historical. So I say, all these slides, the reason why I'm talking about them again is because, again, I talk to a lot of veterans on a daily basis. I get emails, comments from certain YouTube videos. So you can still do, your private provider can still complete DBQs for you. But what needs to happen? The DBQ cannot be expired. It cannot be expired. 2, it has to be completed. Look at the top of the DBQ to see who is eligible to complete the DBQ. I showed you one for the mental. So in that section, it shows the people that can complete that particular mental review PTSD DBQ. All right. 3, it has to be done in person. Okay. If you have a doctor and you're doing it over teleconference or something like that, it's not acceptable. And again, how did in the context that we're using, that I'm saying acceptable, is saying that it's not acceptable for rating purposes, okay? So you definitely want to keep that in mind. It has to be done in person. And if you do it in person, have the doctor write on there in the remarks section that it was done in person. Because even if the VA kicks it back, and, so let's say it's hypothetically, let's say everything is right. All the boxes were completed, all the sections were completed, all the boxes were checked, and it was done in another state, but it's sufficient and it's acceptable for rating purposes, and they still don't use it. Now you have a grounds to submit for a high-level review, or even if you decide to go to BVA, you can say, hey, they violated this particular 38 CFR or whatever, okay? So you have to be educated on that. You just can't say, oh, I'm upset because they denied me, so I'm going to do a high-level review, I'm going to do an appeal. What is your grounds for an appeal? I did a video on that, high-level review, how to win, and how do you fail at it, okay? So you definitely want to keep that in mind. And last, one thing that I want to talk about is some of the trends that I've been seeing, okay? I have some clients, I've been talking to vets, and I know about 7 veterans that did an increase for PTSD, okay? The rating, the DBQ, they had a DBQ for review for the increase for the PTSD. The exams were done in person. It was sufficient for rating purposes, okay? And out of those 7 that I talked to, 5 of them say they received rating decisions granting the increase. The other 2, the VA submitted or requested a CMP exam, okay? So that tells me there's inconsistency within the VA, and that's within every organization, okay? But what we're talking about, if that happens where you submit a DBQ that's acceptable and sufficient for rating purposes, okay, meaning that the DBQ was completed in person and meets all the requirements and everything, okay, and they schedule a CMP exam, you as a veteran got to be educated on, okay, if I go to the exam, what can happen? If I don't go to that exam, what can happen? And I even shared my experience where I stated I wasn't going because I didn't want there to be any conflicting medical evidence, but I knew that my DBQ was acceptable and sufficient and actionable for rating purposes. So you have to be educated on that as well. And some of the information I just previously talked about provides you insight on what needs to happen when you're going to a private physician. Okay, so you definitely want to keep that in mind. So I just been seeing that because in my live Q&As, like I said, phone conversations with veterans, clients, and even when I talk to veterans outside of work, we're all having that conversation. Okay, so it comes down to being educated as it pertains to these particular DBQs. Now, I think, and eventually, when all these DBQs expire, you have some expiring in December, you got some, I think, expiring March 2021, and some expiring next June. I think once they all expire, they're not going to update them. And the reason why I think that, because when I looked in the Manual 21, the verbiage as it pertains to these DBQs is changing, but they're not updating or bringing back any of the old DBQs that have already expired. So that leads me to believe that once June 2021, I think that's when the last DBQs expire, they're not going to put them back on their website. I hope that I'm wrong. It's just a gut feeling that I have. What I've been seeing and talking to vets and the trends that are going on within the VA, okay? So, hey, that's all today for this particular video. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you can get notified when I upload a new video. And please do not forget, I am doing another live stream next week, November 12th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope to see you there. If not, I'll see you in my next educational video. Thank you, and thank you for your service.